Okay, we are live.
Yes.
Yet another live Friday coming right at you from, last time I said where we're from, you don't like that.
No,
I gave out the
I'm
address.
okay
No.
with where we're from, not giving the address.
I wasn't giving the address. I never get no address. Yeah. Welcome again to this series that we've been diving into the cost of awakening, right? We kind of went talking about meaning, talking
Yes.
about burdens, talking about responsibilities.
Mm.
Maybe we touched on boundaries a little bit. I'm not sure if we did.
I think so. Spiritual bypassing.
Bypassing, you're right.
And you did, I think you did give some sort of heads up about boundaries and stuff, since that's what this week is about.
Oh, yeah, from last time. So welcome as we continue these questions and you joining us. If you have any input, any agreement, disagreement, something resonates, something doesn't resonate,
Knowledge to add,
chime in. We would love to hear your perspective on these topics as we explore it from our lens and our perspective and our experience. And hopefully that can shed light on your own experience in your own life and whatever it is that you're going through. And as far as walking a path, whatever that may look like.
Exactly.
Do we want to start like last time we started with the cards and stuff like that?
Oh, yes.
It seems like you moved them.
I did move them.
Okay. So maybe not.
Where are they, though? No, let's do it. I can get
Cards lost in action. Where are they at?
They're like, I'll be back.
Dun, 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 dun.
Where I put my cards. All right, I got them. Yes.
Okay.
100 Divinations for Uncertain Times. An Almanac of Birds by Maria Popova. Amazing. All right, let's see. These cards are amazing, bro.
Yeah.
I love these so much. Thank you, Natalie, if you ever watched these lives.
Thank you, Natalie.
And Emily. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
All right. This one's for me.
What's on this one?
Yeah. Okay.
You want to go first?
Okay. This card says, and it's a picture of the wandering rice bird. I can't see.
Let me see. Nice.
Okay, it says, believe that the impossible is only a narrow idea and not a broad fact. Believe that the powers of attention and love are sufficient to make the possible real. Beautiful.
I love that.
The impossible is a narrow idea.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Wow, that kind of flips it on its head, right? Because most of the time, things are impossible and the only possibility is a narrow.
Exactly.
Right?
It's interesting you like that, but when I talk about flying and stuff,
when he says flying, he means literally flying, like the body, not on an airplane or anything like that.
That's something you consider impossible, right? Or people consider impossible,
right?
But that you don't think she's.
No, she's not talking about that. She's not talking about that. There's like, laws of physics, I guess, and stuff like that. But can humans evolve to fly?
Birds did.
No,
I'm joking. I don't know. We'll see.
This one is a picture of yellow I don't know what that. I don't know what that says. Can you read that?
No. Yellow threaded v- varice, or grundlet.
Hmm. Well, anyhow, it's a beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful image, and it says, mm, what is this word? Bows?
Boughs, yeah, I think so. Boughg. What the hell does that mean?
GH.
Oh, Bough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, bought is the past tense and past participle of the verb buy. Oh, so it's bought.
Wait.
Is it Bought?
No, there's no T.
Oh. A bow, ba. Am I even pronouncing? Oh, let's see. Bow.
Okay.
A bough is a large or main branch of a tree. It usually grows directly from the trunk and is thick, strong, and capable of holding heavy weight.
Wow.
Bow.
Okay, as we talk about responsibility and burdens today, I guess.
Mm.
It says, when care bows the spirits, or bows, how do you say it?
Bow.
Bow?
Mm-hmm.
When care bows the spirits, and the mind plaintive and petulant is searching for ease.
What is putulant? Spell it for me.
Petulant. Petulant?
Okay.
Petulant?
Petulant. Petulant means being easily annoyed, bad-tempered, or sulky in a childish way.
Okay. When care bows the spirits, and the mind plaintive and petulant is searching for ease, march towards the quietest solitudes,
Mm.
not whining for a listener, not waiting for an invitation to sing,
Mm.
until the original care enters the thorax of time, falling silent.
Wow. Transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
He laughed because he
March.
feels like I say everything is transcendence.
Right. March towards the quietest solitudes, not whining for a listener, not waiting for an invitation to sing, until the original care enters the thorax of time, falling silent.
That is so important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you just keep chasing and looking for places, people, things for something that you ultimately can only give to yourself. I mean, we always need others, but that existential thing, that isness, that self-love, self-care, that quietude,
Mm-hmm.
quietude that you have inside yourself is important to get back to that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
curving in on myself, I create again and again.
And I love that because it's what it's also painting is like when this is going on, right?
This is
When care bows the spirits and the mind plaintive and petulant is searching for ease, right? It's like, right? March to, and the word march, right? March towards the quietest solitudes. For what intention? Not whining for a listener, not waiting for an invitation to sing, until the original care enters the thorax of time. What does thorax mean?
Give me the spelling.
Thorax.
So thorax. Okay, a thorax is a part of the body between the neck and the abdomen. In humans and other animals and other mammals, it is commonly called the chest. In insects and other arthropods, it is the middle section of the body between the head and the abdomen.
Oh, so it's kind of like this?
Yeah, the thorax.
That's very interesting.
The thorax of time. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's how she said it.
Yeah.
Basically, the center
the
of
chest.
yourself.
Even in Arabic, we use the word sadr, which is chest,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like it's a metaphor for like your your inner
Mm.
your inner being. It's like
Yeah.
levels, the outer level of the heart,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yeah, it's the area where the heart resides anyway.
Mm. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, that
These
is
are
beautiful.
amazing. Just one more time for both before we go. Mine was believe that the impossible is only a narrow idea and not a broad fact. Believe that the powers of attention and love are sufficient to make the possible real. Beautiful. And yours, bro? When care bows the spirits and the mind plaintive and petulant is searching for ease, march towards the quietest solitudes, not whining for a listener, not waiting for an invitation to sing, until the original care enters the thorax of time, falling silent.
It's
Incredible.
beautiful. I love it.
I love it too. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, which is, I think, both somehow are talking about the or a good entry into the segment that we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about
Yeah.
today, which is um, more specifically the burdens that belong to us,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do we, and also the importance of discernment when it comes to carrying burdens or carrying certain weights in our lives,
Yeah.
right? Which ones are ours? Which ones are other people's society narratives that we're holding and we're carrying that
Yeah.
don't necessarily do any good for ourselves, for our
Yeah.
path, and probably also for the people in our lives as well. So the first kind of prompt into this, um, actually, let me get this. Is maybe before um, reading the question, let's see from these questions when we're talking about burden,
Mm-hmm.
what do we how do we want to define it, or what does it actually mean,
I
right?
totally agree.
So
Definition is so important.
for this conversation, when we're the working definition of burden that we're working with is a burden is anything that places a real claim on our energy,
Yeah.
attention, love, responsibility, or anything of that kind of universe,
A claim on our responsibility. Okay.
requiring us to carry something beyond immediate comfort.
Okay. Are you okay with that definition?
Yeah,
I struggle with it a bit because the whole requiring us to carry something beyond immediate comfort.
I think that part is what makes it a burden.
Yeah. Immediate comfort. I guess I struggle with that just because so much of comfort, one, of course, is relative, but also human beings, like we can really trick ourselves with this whole comfort thing. Like, what is comfort? Is it? I don't know. It just takes me down a rabbit hole, but I can work with that. I can work with that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that part is because I think there's a difference between doing something as that feels like a responsibility, and then doing something that there is um, like it kind of there's an overlap of
Mm-hmm.
how things look like, right, as far as actions and even internally.
Yeah.
But when I hear the word burden, I guess it comes with some kind of like negative connotation.
Right.
You know what I mean? And maybe that's the out. I won't necessarily claim it as or put it as like, oh, it has to be outside of one's comfort
Mm-hmm.
zone or comfort, immediate comfort. But I think it does play into
Mm-hmm.
how we experience it and where we place it in our
Yeah.
internal experience.
From your perspective, then, is a burden, because I think you mentioned it has a bit of a negative connotation, but is that always the case? Like, is it also positive at times?
I
I
think
guess what could make it not so much is one that's not our own,
right,
you know?
exactly. I think that maybe I don't know. This is how I engage with the word, I guess, or how I understand it. It leans more towards responsibility when it is
Your own,
our own.
as opposed to someone else's or being projected on you, or one we take up on ourselves
Right,
from projection or what have you.
right. But is that linguistically? This is what you wanted to bring up, right? Like, is that
Yeah.
really the meaning of it, as
Yeah.
far as just by pure without feeling it has negative or not negative connotation, like
Yeah.
outside of that?
I just asked Google to just, burden versus responsibility, just so we can see what the difference is in mainstream thought. And it says responsibility is an active duty or obligation that you choose or accept, providing a sense of agency and control. A burden is a heavy, often overwhelming emotional or physical weight that causes strain or hardship, which can feel forced or oppressive regardless of your choice.
Mm.
Core differences: responsibility, an obligation or role you manage; burden, a taxing load or source of distress. Control: responsibility empowers you through active choice and management; burden makes you feel trapped, drained, or lacking options. Origin: responsibility comes from the agreed duties, jobs, or conscious commitments. Burden often stems from circumstances outside your control or an unmanaged excessive workload.
Mm.
They even went as far as outcome. For responsibility, it leads to growth, skill building, and satisfaction. Burden leads to burnout, anxiety, and exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That sussed it out a little bit more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because we're still asking about burdens that are not our own, right?
Right.
Because we're a step further than what this took us, or what the,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that definition of burden took us.
Yeah.
We're
So
specifically talking about not taking on others' stuff,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing too, because to differentiate or to know within ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
am I choosing this responsibility, or even taking on this burden? Because the whole
Yeah.
idea of it being outside of one's control,
Yeah.
right? Um, Now the question is, if one actually chooses it, does it turn into a responsibility when it becomes
Yeah.
conscious, right? So let's say, an elderly parent, and they require taking care of, and it's outside of one's own, circumstance, not circumstance, one's own control,
Mm-hmm.
right? Their parent, is getting older, they're ill, they can't take care of themselves, da 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 da, and then they can choose, or it can be put on as a burden,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of feeling this pressure, like, oh, I need to take care of my parent now.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. Da, 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 da. And at the same time, it can be viewed as when it's like a conscious choice, like, oh, now this is a responsibility that I'm willing to
Yeah.
take on. It's not going to make it easier. It's not going to, um, it's not going to change the circumstance.
Right.
The things need to still take on. But that choice, and if that choice is really ours to begin with,
Yeah.
dealing with that, like, having that discernment of like, oh, where is this decision coming from? And even if it's not something that I would want to choose, but then kind of almost like left with no other options.
Yeah.
I think that's where that burden, the heaviness, or
Mhm.
um, the weight of it can
Mhm.
really be felt.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
because I can imagine like, hey, sure, I didn't really choose this, right? And it almost feels like there's no other choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to, I mean, that in itself is a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to act in this way and let's say be responsible in this
Yeah.
way, if that's um, the responsibility, but the weight of it
Mm-hmm.
is like there's a level of, depending on what the circumstances, but there's a level of heaviness that that burden
Yeah.
is bringing.
Some things like in between it, you were saying like, or at least for the example, right? Like when do we really have a choice and we behave as if we don't have a choice?
Wait, say that again.
When do we really have a choice, but we behave as if we don't have a choice and we take on the burden? Like let's say even in this example,
Mm-hmm.
clearly someone can just say, no, I'm not doing that. I mean, people do it all the time. But the shame, the guilt, the societal expectation, all those things can make you or make a person feel like, oh, I have no choice. And they take it on because of those reasons. And in that case, I guess it would still be a burden, but they're choosing still to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's different from, you know, it's still all the same things, societal expectation, everything else like that. But the person has the orientation that, like, I'm taking on this burden.
Mm-hmm.
So that, maybe it's just a responsibility. Or maybe I still look at it as a burden, but I'm choosing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The illusion that I don't have a choice,
Right.
that I project on myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For not just this situation, but like any situations that might come up.
Yeah.
Like, am I really at choice, or am I saying I don't have a choice because there's another impact or outcome or judgment that I'm
Yeah.
trying to avoid?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think about those things because, like, where's the choice when I do take on a burden that's not mine?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, the choice, I guess, is always with me,
Right.
and it's something. There's a payoff I get from carrying a burden that that's not mine, that I'm not choosing.
You said a payoff,
Mm-hmm. I think there's some sort of payoff.
meaning.
Like if we continue with this analogy or this example, if I didn't really want to take care of my aging parents who were really, really sick, and I didn't have the means or whatever the circumstances was, I still say yes, I'll do that because I don't want people to judge me. So my payoff for taking care of my parents is these people here don't judge me.
Mm-hmm.
I still fit in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the payoff is not really, oh, I take care of my family and I do something for them. There's no I'm not getting that. Well, maybe you'll get some intrinsic value at some point, the love of taking care of your family. But I think when we take on burdens that are not ours to carry, there's a payoff that we're getting that we just don't want to recognize somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not always the case. Maybe it's just blindness or falling in line with what the societal status is. But I really do think that, like, anytime I'm wearing a burden that I say I didn't choose and that I'm living into consistently,
Yeah.
for me, I need to look at, well, what's my payoff?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I really doing this?
Yeah.
Am I just acting like there's some burden being placed on me that I don't want to carry and I'm having to carry but I'm really choosing it.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the case, Antoine, what's your payoff? What are you really doing it for?
Yeah.
That you want to remain um, willfully dense about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that I totally agree, because it's pointing towards the intention,
Mm-hmm.
the deeper intention behind the action, the burden, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
behind the choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether that choice is conscious or not conscious,
Yeah.
right? And I think getting to that point of really, yeah, what am I actually choosing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if I tell myself it's not a choice, I don't have any other choice, right? But the act, in reality, quote unquote, there is a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that question is pointing towards that intention,
Mm-hmm.
like for what reason,
Yeah.
right? That was an interesting way to get that go. For what reason, and what am I getting out of it,
Yeah.
right? It's very interesting because sometimes these things start one way, and then like they just in the middle of it they transmute or become something completely else, or something, or a level of complexity comes out of it, right? In this example that we've been using about aging parents, is like it might start as, you know, okay, maybe, yeah, I don't know what my, extended family is gonna think of me, da 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 da. And during that time, that might be like the motivator, right? There's probably other motivators too. Like that's the thing. Like the
I'm
level of
sure.
complexity is
Yeah.
insane. But something that I've heard people express is like during that time, something else completely emerges that they didn't know was even possible.
That time, are you speaking specifically to the example we're using,
Yeah.
or anytime someone's taking on a burden that is
No, it's specifically
so-called
in that example, but
Okay.
I can see different area or different examples that also might apply. This might apply to
Mm-hmm.
where it becomes like a learning thing. Like they find out so much about themselves. They find out so much about the people that they're dealing with. They just because of the container itself
Yes.
is something completely different. So
I
even
agree.
though like they went into it with some kind of known or unknown intention to
There's still something to
themselves,
be learned.
or what I'm saying, like they don't want to be shamed by the extended family, or da 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 da, all these different things. There's the complexity that's in it, that's like a sweetness that may come out
Yeah.
from these experiences,
Yeah.
that in the end of the day, let's say you'll speak to that person after the fact, let's say they're no longer taking care of their parents, stuff like that, and I've heard people describe it as like, yo, this was like
I totally
one of
agree
the
with that.
best times, quote unquote, or one of the
Yeah,
biggest
thanking
things
God
that
for
I've,
it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They would thank God for it. So it's there's the level of complexity in like, what is this receptivity that one may not have in the beginning, and
Right.
somehow it starts to emerge itself.
Right.
And if that person in the beginning said, I mean, this is now becomes completely into hypothetical situations, but says like, hey, this is not my burden, and I'm not gonna,
Did they just lose a lesson that they could have learned?
or an experience, maybe not even lesson, right? But like an experience
Yeah.
of which that
Yeah.
can have so much richness in it.
Can I say something about that?
Mhm.
I agree with this. I guess what I'm wanting to do though, like, because this is that analogy, or that example, which is totally relevant because I hear it all the time, actually. And when the question is, am I at choice, or am I choosing from somewhere else in terms of burdens that are placed on me? I wouldn't want to cover that the possibility of learning something amazing from from highlighting the fact that like you are still at choice and you don't have to gaslight yourself into the choice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're taking on the burden
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying, hey, I don't want to do this and I'm going to do it anyway, and you get something out of it, okay. If you're taking on the burden and it's really for, other people are going to judge me, but I still learned something, I got something out, good.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all great downstream results of it.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do you discern whether you're taking on other people's burdens or not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think someone can spiritually bypass their own responsibility and self-inventory by saying, I'm just going to take on this burden because it's a possibility that I might gain insight after.
Yeah.
I think humans often, whenever situation they're going through, they survive it, they're going to gain some insight after it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much of the possibility of a hypothetical downstream impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's different when it maybe comes to your parents. But the hypothetical downstream impact should play a role in whether or not I'm going to have discernment and being clear on whether I'm taking on a burden because I choose it
Mm-hmm.
or because society's projecting on something on me.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, don't allow the possibility or the hypothetical to cause me to be willfully dense about what my choice is in the moment.
Right.
I just was reading this book called Useful Delusions. And like, if someone needs to delude themselves in order to be okay with taking on a burden by saying something like, oh, I didn't have a choice when they possibly did, and it's useful, I guess I would be okay with that. You know what I mean? But to sort of like, I don't know, to jump into it and
with that, to jump into it saying like I didn't have a choice. No, I think that does more harm than good
to their own self-agency and sovereignty and maybe self-revelation. You know what I mean? Like, and bitterness and
not only that, and it's disempowering.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the autonomy. It's leaving it's taking oneself's actual autonomy. It's creating a narrative and a framework that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this was just put on me.
Yeah.
When in fact, even through kind of like what you said, which is beautiful, like even through all of that, to say, okay, this is where I'm dealt with, and I'm choosing this.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, I might be doing it because, man, I don't want to deal with my extended family and what they're going to be saying, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All of these things, but like to actually choose it consciously.
Right.
And whatever. And the experience actually may not be good either.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
you chose it.
But there's a choice in it that's being taken. And that in itself, that is empowering in itself, even though the circumstances might not be empowering. The circumstance itself might be heavy, like a burden. The circumstance itself might be so dense, but that inner autonomy, that inner conscious thing to say, okay, even though I feel like my back is against the wall, there is somehow still a choice that I can choose.
Exactly.
Yes or no, and preferably finding a third choice to kind of get it into that mix so that like, okay, there's this, and still I'm choosing to do this thing or take on this quote unquote burden.
Yeah.
And I'm, whether or not something comes out of it, something doesn't come out of it, that's outside of the question, but the important thing is that moment that I'm choosing. Because otherwise that delusion, that delusion of no choice hurts more than, let's say, a delusion that somebody says, well, I might get something out of it that might be sweet. That's that's a delusion too, but it's a different kind of delusion. You know what I mean? Like there's a choice that at least I'm choosing this. Even though I might believe something sweet might come out of it or not. Or
I agree. I think that being real with myself, ultimately, and not just from the level of thought, right? But like ultimately, like from the deepest sense of myself, being real with what my choice really is so-called spiritual discernment.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
allowing that to allow me to allow any so-called burdens that's coming at me to be sifted through this membrane of spiritual discernment, or the capacity for whatever level of realness with myself I have,
Mm-hmm.
that I can be. Um, that's where I can sort of gauge what burdens are mine to take on,
Right.
and what burdens are people projecting onto me that I can let go of.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or choose, because if they projecting onto me, right, and I see it, I get really self-referential about it, and then choose it, is no longer a burden they projected onto me. It's I've chosen it. It's my responsibility. It's my burden.
Mm.
But if I'm just walking blindly or sleepwalking,
Mm-hmm.
carrying bags and weights that I didn't choose,
Yeah.
and I wake up like, oh, I got all this on my back, that's something different.
Mm-hmm.
That's burdens that maybe people, place, society have put on me.
Yeah.
That, like, as I'm waking up to myself, as I'm becoming more spiritually discerning or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
I can start taking some of those weights off.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And I think that process, like this, a lot of people describe that process as like the unlearning,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or swifting through what's yours and what's not. What's your voice? Which one is your voice and which one is not? Just because it sounds like you doesn't mean it's yours.
Facts.
You know? So all of these things. And I think one of the points that we're constantly returning to, I think not only in this series, right, but like constantly and consistently, is, am I living consciously? Am I making these decisions? Am I taking these decisions and making these choices with a level of consciousness up to the capacity of which my awareness can hold for that particular moment?
Yeah.
Right? That, like, because sometimes one can look back and be like, oh, wait a second. I thought I was conscious then, or I made that decision consciously back then, but now I can see certain blind spots that I didn't see before.
Mm-hmm.
But no problem in that moment, as long as the inner actual choice and reality was conscious in that moment.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And it becomes, then all of these things, responsibilities, burdens, and stuff like that, become the curriculum, you know, on the path of which way we're engaging and dealing with these things.
Exactly.
You know, one of the ways that it also gave as an example to a burden is, this is interesting, giving it as keeping a promise, that can show up as a burden, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because this is maybe to the point that I was just saying, right? In the moment, one can consciously choose, yes, I'm gonna do this thing. What I'm gonna meet you there at this time, or no, that might be too late. I'm gonna officiate your wedding. You know what I mean? Because this now has more, you know, than just meeting somebody for coffee or something like that. And then that's a promise, right? And then time gets closer, something happens, now you're no longer feeling it, or another opportunity comes in that's more attractive to you than that, whatever, and now you're like, but you know what I mean? There's this, that now a choice is presenting itself as some level of responsibility and or burden. You know what I mean? So like, it can show up as something as major as taking care of your aging parents, and then it can show up in like just regular kind of everyday interactions that we're saying yes to or no to or whatever, that over time it turns into something,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said about, you know, when you don't have the capacity and capacity of awareness is growing, levels of what you're awake, levels of the choices you're awake to or not
Mm-hmm.
changes over time. And we need the ability to be able to throw those things off as we go and as we grow in capacity
Mm-hmm.
of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that. Um, I'm also seeing that like there is these degrees to wakefulness in terms of knowing myself,
Mm-hmm.
knowing ourselves. Kind of like when we wake up in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
sometime if we haven't slept well, we're dull, we're moving about, hit our foot on the side of the bed. But there's a level of wakefulness where we can wake up and have our eyes still closed and navigate around the room that we know so well because awareness is bright. You can see the image of the room and where everything is, even with your eyes closed, there's that much wakeful alertness in your body, in your mind, you know?
Mm.
But when you're dull, half sleep, you don't know anything, you're forgetful, you know what I mean? That range of wakefulness, from dull to wakefulness, is often where we are when we're making agreements and making choices and choosing something for the future
Yeah.
based on our level of dullness or wakefulness that wherever we are in this curriculum that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be okay to pivot some places and
Mm-hmm.
then other places say, hey, I'm going to be in integrity about this specific thing,
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm at a different level in my life now where I know this is not for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the ability to understand a burden that you wake up in at a different level of awareness is still not yours to keep unless you choose it at that moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's very interesting because it also gave the example of living with integrity
Mm-hmm.
as can show up as a burden,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because yeah, as a burden that we can choose, right? Like that's the thing. These things that one can wear these modes of existence, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is to constantly, with whatever moment that we are in that level of wakefulness,
Mm-hmm.
are we choosing it again? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, are we
Exactly.
returning to it? Are we choosing something else, something different in that moment
Yeah.
as it comes, right? Are we saying, yeah, like what the choice is? Are we saying like, oh man, I didn't want to do this, but I promised,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because I'm going to keep it.
Right.
Not because of, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it could be because of other reasons, right? But I'm choosing yes again,
Right.
and again and again,
Right.
in different degrees of wakefulness,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, oh shit, like I chose this specific thing, but at this level, it is a stark contradiction to who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave my word to this.
Mm-hmm.
Your word to yourself, I imagine, depending, I guess, on the circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you navigate that, right?
Yeah.
Like, because if it's a stark contrast, then my first and primary loyalty is to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? For me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's the interesting thing, is because in yeah, this is very awesome, because in the moment, or in these moments of making these decisions and keeping one's word to oneself, right? Where, and this is where the idea right now of making false idols is kind of coming up for me, right? Um,
False idols.
False idols of idolizing, integrity, right? Like to make a choice because a false idol, I'm idolizing myself as a trait or personality that has integrity, quote unquote. So now I'm choosing in order to keep a particular image or keep a particular, oh, I know myself as I'm the person who keeps to their own word, but it's putting that as an idol versus what the moment is actually saying, you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
what the moment is. And it's so, yeah, like there's something about that that's so fine in that choice in that moment, right? Whether or not like I'm I'm actually awake to the choice that I'm making and to the subtleties of if the choice that I'm making to keep a particular image of being in integrity or keep idealizing, having that as of some kind of false, as an idol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or as a trait, then, but again, like,
Can I speak to it a bit?
yeah.
So, like, I guess in different degrees of wakefulness, right? How I'm trying to describe it, the choice is clear. There's no going back and forth based on what's in integrity and what's not integrity. Is as clear as when you're waking up in the morning, do you see the chair there that you're going to hit your toe on or not? Is that clear? When it's dull or duller, if I'm trying to like use words to describe this, the mind comes in and thoughts come in trying to give pros and cons for what's integrity, what's not, and well, how do I see myself? How will this person see me? You know what I mean? Those things start to be measured based on a level of like checking boxes, checks and minuses, which is useful in terms of being able to navigate life, right? You need a clear sense of self, even in your thought life, to be able to maintain some level of agency,
And
you know what I mean? And relationships. But as a person becomes more and more awake, I guess I'll say, and I'm using it specifically based on the analogy I gave regarding wakefulness. When you get up out of bed and you're dull and you know you're fumbling around and you can't see this lesser state of consciousness, or where you're completely awake to the degree where you can walk around your room with your eyes closed. I'm trying to give that distinction. In that space, the thought whether this is there or that's there, this there is not there like that. You know what I mean? It's not a sifting through thoughts in order to, in my opinion, for me, in order to get to what's clearly for me or not, depending on the capacity or degree of wakefulness. You know what I mean? Like, but if there's a lesser degree of wakefulness, then there's more sifting through pros and cons and measuring this with that I have to go through in order to get to my choice or my lack of choice. You know, but like that's the distinction I'm trying to make between this idea of a level of clarity and self-awareness that is not trumped by the measurements of that the thoughts are trying to make. In fact, the thoughts or the images or the distinctions in the mind that sort of weighs the pros and cons is not having to do the math because it's seeing the choices so clear, like the objects in the room from a greater level of wakefulness. Like there's no, the chair is there or the chair is not there, and I can walk through to the bathroom or not. You know what I mean? Or I walk through and I hit my toe, kind of like that. Does that say anything, or is it so ambiguous?
I get what you're pointing at. That level of wakefulness where the choice is so clear, or the path of which moving forward is so clear that there is no this or that, or back and forth or whatever.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the example of, let's say, promises or other stuff, like there's other things that are involved in that way.
Mm-hmm.
How does that play?
Promises in terms of,
Like, no, just like,
you pointed to there as if,
yeah, because you're saying like keeping a promise, like that's the example that we're giving of, like, let's say a burden or like how does,
you never
or
had a promise
integrity.
that you couldn't fulfill on, or you chose not to fulfill on?
No, I know.
So what do you mean?
What I'm saying is that you're saying it's so clear that what the consideration of the other
No.
is that.
It's so clear what I need to do in that moment. It's so clear that, like, oh, I said I was going to do this, but it's a stark contrast to my level of awareness now. Like, oh shit, like I chose the wrong thing. I cannot do that. That's wrong for me. From there, I get to be aware, like, I'm not supposed to be doing that, and still choose it or not.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
about
yeah.
being radically honest with yourself,
Yeah.
Antoine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
like, not airy fairy, sort of flowery, like, oh, I gave my word and now I gotta, like, what's the real of what I want to do right now?
Yeah.
And if I can feel I don't want to do this, but I'm still choosing it, is my choice.
Yeah. Okay.
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's clearly I don't want to do this, and this is a stark contrast, I'm choosing not to do this, then there's a new version of integrity to speak of. Hello, hey, I know I said I was going to do this, but today I woke up and it's just a no for me. Like, that level of honesty or realness with someone. I get that this is putting you in a jam. I would still override this feeling and come do it if I felt it was necessary. But this is not that level of thing that I'm willing to override for. Like, to be that radically honest with yourself and the people who you say, Antoine, you care about in your life. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be disappointed. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they're going to be really happy that, like, oh, I get that this was a bigger thing, so I'm willing to override this stark contrast in myself and choose from a level of awareness that this is not for me to still do it. For me, it's about being radically honest with myself and also with the other person. I would hate to be going to do something for somebody and the whole time I don't want to be there and they have no idea. For me, that's disgusting. I wouldn't want anyone to do that for me, especially without telling me. Because I would want the choice to be like, oh, you're doing it for me, but you don't really want to do it for me. I would want the choice to be like, thank you, I really appreciate it because I really need this right now. Or no, I'd rather you not show up for me like this if this is not what's true to you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really particular about how I spend my time, attention, and energy. And I'd rather it not be in spaces or places or faces that don't share that same level of realness with me. I want people to show up if it's an emergency and I don't feel like it, Antoine, but you stuck somewhere, I'm coming. I don't feel like coming. Let me know that, because maybe there's an option B. Or like, yo, thank you so much for coming because I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Like, I want realness, you know what I mean? From myself, ultimately.
Yeah.
So I said a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. So all of these things, I guess, regardless of here, what we're playing with, I guess, if things are coming at us as burdens, swifting through them, and then maybe choosing it as a responsibility, and or choosing it as not choosing, saying, okay, I'm not gonna take this on. Or the various other ways of which that you said, like, okay, it can be yes and yes but no and, no but,
Yeah.
all of these different variations
Yeah.
that things can, that a choice can look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That a choice doesn't necessarily need to be so static that it's like,
Yeah.
it can be yes and,
Yeah.
yes but, no and, no, like all of these
Yes,
different
yes,
variations
yes.
that a choice can take.
The common denominator is a self-aware choice to the capacity I have to make one
Mm-hmm.
or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what about the 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 responsibilities that we are choosing, that kind of come into our, I guess I don't know how, when, at what point things turn into responsibilities that um, are quote unquote belong to us. One of the ways that this right here is talking about is something like a vocation as a burden, um,
A vocation as a burden.
and or, well, meaning like a responsibility that, like, it belongs to you, kind of a thing, right? Like
a vocation meaning like, what's a vocation in terms of a job or a
No.
craft or hobby or?
Yeah, more like a like your work, kind of like
But not your job.
It doesn't have to. It can.
Okay.
A vocation can be a providing
Mhm.
thing, but doesn't necessarily need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, somebody who's a woodworker or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it can be, that's their vocation. They spend their entire, like, that's their work. That's their main thing, right?
Okay.
It can provide for them,
Mm-hmm.
or it can be their vocation, of which maybe they teach woodwork, they do it on whatever, but they also have a different job that maybe provides for them and their family.
Okay.
Know? But that being as a vocation, and sometimes things within the arts kind of, I feel like, fall in that
Mm-hmm.
kind of quote unquote responsibility thing that
Okay.
maybe sometimes present themselves as responsibility. You find people talking about it in a sense of a trust, being entrusted with a talent,
Mm-hmm.
or being entrusted with a certain ability,
Mm-hmm.
And that responsibility within us, or as it shows up, to develop that talent, or
Mm-hmm.
develop that ability, or whatever it is.
Okay.
How does that play into the different levels of burden or different levels of responsibilities, as far as, hey, okay, is this really mine? How do I take this on as a responsibility?
Like a responsibility or a burden? Because I guess if it's a responsibility, it's just a responsibility taken on, right? Or are you saying this as if someone has projected this vocation on you as a burden that's not yours? Or
No,
are you?
I'm saying that the heaviness, that these things can get to a point where, or I don't know where it usually starts from,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a burden, meaning like there's a heaviness, and there's whatever, which other words it used, like there's
in terms of the
okay.
burden, or in terms of the responsibility, or I guess both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There could be a heaviness to it,
Right.
and you're saying, what about that?
No, I'm saying when that thing is let's say, an example of a vocation, your own little spark, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is, right? Does that naturally, or normally growing up, show up in, as we becoming more and more mature within ourselves, as, oh, wait a second, there's this talent that I have. It's somewhat my responsibility to develop it, to take it on, to improve my craft. I'm getting better at it. I have some kind of responsibility, and or sometimes depending on that's what I'm saying. The weight of it shifting that now becomes a burden in order to like teach. The less of a certain lineage that you know what I mean. Like all of these things that starts to build on top of um, something that is our own. It belongs to us.
Yeah.
Right. This gift, this talent, whatever, you know. But depending on how we navigate it, right, it's almost sometimes walking this thin line between turning towards a burden versus turning this conscious responsibility with oh yeah, I'm responsible for developing this thing.
Okay.
This entrust, you know, in some traditions, like it's like they call it like a sacred trust, right? Like you've been given this sacred trust, and do with it as you wish.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? But know that
Yeah.
this is a sacred thing that you've been entrusted with.
Yeah. I might be, I'm sure I'm biased when it comes to this answer, I guess. In my head, what you're describing, I guess, maybe the weight of it is more felt in a collectivistic society, or a society that's more collectivistic. But me growing up here in America and East Coast energy and all this stuff is very individualistic. And so when, like, let's say me doing with poetry and stuff like that, it is self-referential. It's about my experience. I use it for my processing. Now there might be some something for others in my work that I would love for them to participate in, or maybe use for processing, or whoever might feel, but it's not primary for me. You know what I mean? I don't feel an extra burden for me to get extremely good at poetry, or like gotta have my work out there in the world kind of thing. Or, and I don't know if I can blame that on just being from an individualistic society. I have no idea. Maybe it was just how I oriented the poetry. For me, when I was very young, was very much about processing my own grief and torment, and it became a solace for me and a sanctuary. And so my relationship with it was always very personal. You know what I mean? So it was never in my head like I need to get better about my poetry or any things until I did the MFA, a few years back. And I understood, like, oh wow, like there's so many ways this can grow, and da-da-da. But in terms of the extra burden or responsibility, I did not feel that. I felt that in the world around me, from other people needing their work to be out there in the world, and they felt very empowered by leaving a legacy of their work and what it could do in the world, and that inspired me. But for me, I didn't feel it in that same way. I'm okay, and I want it in the world, but not enough for it to become a burden for me to try to have happen. I love creating poetry and expressing my emotions through poetry, but not enough for me to feel burdened by having to do it, or getting better at it. Is very self-referential for me, very individualistic process. So for myself, I guess that's how I answer that question. If I even answered it, I mean, did it give anything to what you were saying?
I guess I think the main thing that it made me think about, like you mentioned the society, and like that was something like, oh okay, yeah, there's a variable dynamic kind of a thing, but to your point, doesn't mean like the entire thing.
Yeah.
You're just talking about your experience as far as
because I imagine, if I might just add this to how I was thinking of, so you can see where I was coming from. I know in a lot of cultures, certain craft is passed down from one family member to another. You know what I mean? And certain things are, held up in a, like you said, a trust that is generational.
Yeah.
I don't have that. That's mostly been wiped from my culture here in the
Yeah.
U.S. So
But that has that I think is a line of its own, because there's definitely more felt sense of the burden slash responsibility. It's such an interesting thing,
yeah,
because you hear about these, like I know from a kora player from West Africa who the playing the kora in his lineage, he learned it and it goes like tens of generations up. It's a long time, right?
hmm
There's a different level of burden or weight that comes on that person if they're it's like, bro, I'm not even into kora. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
That it's like there's a choice.
That's the distinction I'm making between a collectivistic society and an individualistic society.
Yeah,
You know, there's more of that in a collectivistic society.
I won't put that as a collective
Mm-hmm.
on a collectivistic society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe more on I don't know, maybe a particular lineage or something like that. Because somebody who lives in that society may not have that experience whatsoever, or somebody who lives in
I'm
that.
just saying it's more prominent in those societies. Let's say India, where they pass music down and drumming down and these things, or even Arabic cultures, right? Don't they have people who do music and certain crafts and it's passed down through families there also?
Not as much, probably,
At
but
some point, and I'm
yeah,
sure some of those qualities, like in the family, that level of responsibility can be felt more so. You have to be a certain way than in individualistic societies. Like, now I know we have it some more when it comes to like, oh, you're going to take over the family business or da da da.
well,
But
they have that in Japan. Like,
that's very sparse here. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Places like Japan, places like India, places there's more collectivistic opportunity, but also burden to fit into what the tribal inheritance is. You know, rather here, there's a level of curse from not needing to do that, but also liberty from not needing to do that.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
but I think
I
the
still think
burden
there
is
is.
stronger in those places.
Yeah, but I think in even in those places we're talking about, or what you're mentioning, is something that is so niche and something that is so tight that even though at large the society is collective, this what you're talking about is very, very
The
niche.
like the level
The
of felt
lineage,
burden.
yes, that is being passed down from lineage to lineage. What I'm saying is that even
I'm
in
talking
a
about felt the burden, not necessarily what they're actually doing, but the
no, not talk
burden.
about what they're doing.
Oh,
That burden, the burden that you're describing, is coming from a pass down of a lineage, not
that's
necessarily from a culture.
the pass down of the lineage. What do you mean? How you separate that from culture?
Because what I'm saying is that one can be in that culture who doesn't have a background of anything whatsoever that's being passed down
Of
from their
course,
lineage, and then there's a talent of which that they're entrusted, right?
from the lineage,
No.
just from that come up spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. I
I
get
know.
that. I'm talking about in general, in collectivistic societies, you'll see much more of what you described about something being passed down 10 generations than in an individualistic society. I think it's common knowledge that in those collectivistic societies that something can happen like what you're talking about in terms of like just something spontaneously that they wanting to do that they're just in them to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, because I think that kind of that is that is true in both cultures. That is true in both places.
What you describe, yes,
Yeah,
but there's a heavier burden in collectivistic societies to do what has been passed down for 10 generations.
yeah, but that's
Not so much in this society.
I know.
That's the point I'm making. That's why I was saying when I speak to my experience, individualistically speaking, I think there's less of, especially because my culture was cut off from that kind of thing in terms of African American, there is less burden to need to fit that mold of like, oh, this was passed down 10 generations.
But that's the completely extreme. That's what I'm trying to say. That even in those cultures, what you're describing is not as common
No,
as
it's
you're
not true,
describing it.
bro. In terms of, let's just say marriage, that let's say marriages where they are put together.
Mhm.
That's more so in collectivistic societies than individualistic societies.
Wait, what does that have to do with it?
We're talking about the burden that someone else places on you, right? And so, like, if you are a female in any of those societies where arranged marriages were happening, right?
Mhm.
Generationally, but you were the one or many females who say, I don't want that. You can feel extra burden.
Yeah.
This is what the question is. Like, other
No,
people
what
putting
I'm saying.
burdens.
No, I get that. What when I'm talking about, we're talking about that vocation aspect, right?
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
let's stay with that. So what I'm saying is that even if part of the immediate lineage, there's nothing being passed down,
Okay.
which is your example. Nothing quote unquote to your knowledge, maybe, that's like, um, oh, I come from a long lineage of writers and poets and da 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 da. Doesn't have to be like that.
Mhm.
Somebody, even in a collective society, their family, just let's say farmers or whatever, right? And they're a talent for a musical instrument, let's say,
Mhm.
or writing, or science, or whatever,
Mhm.
whatever that thing may be. I'm talking about that thing, that
But
talent.
and whether they feel more burden from pressure from the family to not do that talent.
No, I'm talking about that fine line of like within oneself
Mhm.
to, hey, am I, does this thing gonna turn into, do I take it as a responsibility, right? To develop, to go
Mhm.
with, to have it, like, hey, I was entrusted with this thing.
From God, from nature, from somebody else.
Yeah, somewhere,
Not from the family.
not from the family.
Okay, I
Not from
think
the
this is where
family.
I'm getting confused at. You're saying I was entrusted, meaning why were you entrusted? Because you can do it well?
Yeah,
Or you like it?
yeah, your talent, you're somehow, it comes to you more naturally than everybody else.
But in the language, it already sets the person up for a burden. I was entrusted. It already gives the person a responsibility or like for me, like I would never say, because my thing is poetry, I would never say I was entrusted with poetry because that automatically sets me up for the burden if I don't choose to do it. Or do you get what I'm trying to say?
But that's what I'm saying, or the responsibility.
If I don't say this was entrusted to me, oh, if I say it was entrusted to me, it sets me up for the responsibility of it.
Does it? What I'm saying,
I
like,
think so.
at that
The
moment too.
language is the language, but that language about it has already been defined by the architecture that the person is living in or growing up in. You know what I mean? Um, the language that we use. Just think about it. Like how I described poetry, right? It was something that was in me, something that I use.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine I said I was entrusted with this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes on a different quality.
Right.
So I might feel some burden around it, but that's not my language, so I don't feel that. You know what I mean? I think.
But do you also not feel the burden and not feel the responsibility? That's what I'm saying.
I don't feel either.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because it's for myself. If I stay self-referential about it, it's my relationship with my process. I don't need to decide to have it as a responsibility, or I don't need to decide whether it's a burden or not. Now, if I sort of took on some of the energy that I felt in the MFA, which needs to be there because they're training writers to go out and make money and stuff like that and do what they need to do with their work, then I feel more like, oh, I got to get out there. I got to get my work out there. I got to refine my craft. But that's not there. Is this what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's not there for me. And yeah, like maybe it is not anything to do with this relationship that I was putting forth between collectivistic societies and individualistic societies. I mean, I think there's something still there to be talked about. But I will say, in this society, there is this feeling of people definitely wanting to, um, you know, refine their craft,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that's just an innate thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I felt like that, would I look at it as a burden or responsibility? I don't know, because I don't feel like that. How
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I think that's the line to having it shift from responsibility to burden, and or do they exist at the same time, right?
In
Like
terms of your vocation.
in terms of the vocation,
Mhm.
like in some sense, I can imagine to the example that you gave, or to like the lineage things, maybe it can be more leaning towards burden because, dang, I don't want to be the last person to end this. You know what I mean? So now there's a level of burden, and
Yeah.
that if it's on a scale, maybe it feels the weight of a burden and something that's like heavier
Mhm.
be on the scale than something that, again, there's a choice in it. All of that we're saying there's a choice. Um, but for me, there is a sense of responsibility
Mhm.
that comes with it.
Mhm.
That comes with music, and yeah, something that, yeah, I don't come from a lineage of musicians or anything
Mhm.
like that in that sense.
So you don't feel that burden from there.
Right. So I don't feel the burden from there, but I feel a level of responsibility of like, and maybe I don't necessarily talk to myself like, oh, I was entrusted with this, but in a sense of like, oh, like, I don't know where this came from. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
where this came from, and it's something something that belongs to me,
Mhm.
and it's my responsibility, if I so choose, to develop, to take care of, to kind of like a gardener kind of a thing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and also, but it's interesting because it does translate to, and it's funny that you said the whole collective thing, because for me it does translate to the place that I'm living in. It
Mhm.
translates to an outside projection
Mhm.
rather than staying only being an internal process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which it is that too, obviously.
Mhm.
But it does, that responsibility kind of translates to the outside um, relationship, uh, community, whatever, stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
it relates, it starts to go into that direction as well, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, that's where that responsibility burden line that I was talking about, right? Like, it's kind of like getting to a place that it's balanced, because now the minute you involve outside people, that's where the responsibility burden kind of like scale thing starts to do this.
Mhm.
you know
Mhm.
Hearing somebody like, maybe Nina Simone, or I don't know if it was Maya Angelou or one of them, saying that, I think maybe Nina Simone, oh, God bless her soul,
Mhm.
um, saying something like, the artist is the mirror of their time,
Mhm.
and like that responsibility, or the seat of which that she not only chose to sit in,
Mhm.
but like her craft, like taking her craft to like a level, and not only just technical craft, personal,
Yeah.
like she, she herself was the craft. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um, and also to be a mirror to society.
Yeah.
right? So that like, but it can turn into a burden if it's not like watched out for. It can
Yeah.
turn into a burden, and that can consume that artist, and that can consume the vocation itself.
Yeah.
Where now it's like
Yeah.
eating, they kind of start eating themselves in some type of way.
Yeah.
So the whole thing about the vocation, I was talking about that kind of, where sometimes it can start as a responsibility, but when it goes outside,
Yeah.
now it can come back as a burden. And if we're not careful, it'll take that responsibility and turn it into a burden. You know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm.
always, I don't know what it needs, like some kind of a checks and balances
Mm-hmm.
that needs to take place,
I think it's
which
awareness.
where that also self-reckoning or self-accounting kind of come into that.
Awareness of
You know what I
self.
mean?
Yeah. Facts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because yeah, that means your external and if without the awareness, your external environment has the ability to overpower your self-referential nature,
Mm-hmm.
that thing that had you first create this craft.
Right.
There's always this relationship between the outer and inner. I mean, Nina Simone was not just creating music. Her
Mm-hmm.
music exactly was responding to all the trauma that was really happening in her life and in the
Right.
world and in her culture. And there is this relationship between, you hear so many musicians talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
this witnessing quality, this zone, this flow in the pocket is I think it points back to this idea of transcendence and
Mm-hmm.
witnessing that will allow this object referral reality, whatever the circumstances in the environment,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's for praise or disgust, not to completely overtake your subjective referral nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the balance. Whether you're creating from there or in relationship with that and seemingly external factors.
Yeah.
You know, um, to your point too. When I was writing poetry and in the MFA, there was I can't remember who this author was, but she said something that your work is not completed unless someone else reads it.
Mm.
Or she said something like the completion of your craft is when someone else is experiencing it.
Mm.
And I thought that was absolutely beautiful and it inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
When I read that, and it's just not true to my constitution. I guess I can say that too.
Mm-hmm.
While that inspires me and I feel the fire in that, like, yes, also is not true to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas, I've seen you for however long, I know it's true to you to
Mm-hmm.
be connected in other spaces, doing your music, connecting with other people and like vibing like that. I could do without it, which
Mm-hmm.
you know about me from
Yeah.
all this long. I was never like, oh, let's go do this a little.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll do it if y'all into it, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'd rather not, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yep. Yep.
But it's something about that too. It makes me think, like, in terms of responsibility and burdens,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of external reality, um, and projecting or making a mark on
Mm-hmm.
a self-referral nature or consciousness. Like, is it me or is it isolation? Is it troubled? Is it conditioning? Is it what is it, right?
Mm.
Like, I would have to really look inside to say, well, why is it that you're not so concerned about the tribal aspect of it all?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it that you are both extroverted and introverted, or have you been hurt to the point to where you just like, humans, I'm not really beat, like, a little bit, I'll be with y'all a little bit, but like
the entire
you know
human
what I mean?
race.
Like, after a little bit, I'm going back to where you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who knows? But what's honest in the moment, even if it's not the truth,
Yeah.
ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not about that life of constantly projecting everything outward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that honesty of like knowing, and not But you're right. You're right about like, okay, there's that honesty and also these questions or self-accounting questions of like, okay, let me, if one's genuinely curious about it, it's like, okay, let me, where is that really from? And sometimes it's not even, that question itself sometimes leads to dead ends,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So there's like, even with that, there's some caution, like beware, because
Yeah.
sometimes it just goes and like, you
Yeah.
just end up in looping
Yeah,
and
yeah,
going
yeah.
so many ways and trying to figure out where it's just come
Facts.
from, where it might be completely out of the memory or it might be, I don't know, like
Facts.
in whatever ways. But it can be something where, um, yeah, you're right. Maybe something with upbringing, um, and it's vice versa, right? Somebody who wants to put it out there, like,
And constantly need the status or
yeah,
the experience or
well,
to be
exactly,
told like, oh, this is amazing.
right,
Yeah, I'm just not there.
exactly, yeah, and yeah, the point of like the honesty of what it is in that moment and how it is, right?
Because that's the
Even,
capacity. That's
yeah,
the level of wakefulness that's there.
yeah,
You can only choose where you're at the
right.
moment.
Because even in that moment, if somebody's like, no, I want to be in front of so many people, I want to share this in front of whoever, how many ever,
Yes.
you know what I mean? I want everybody to hear. And if that's like really the honest thing, like,
Yes.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
like,
And even when it's not,
mhm.
right? Even if it's not honest, if that's what's, or I guess even when it's not truthful, but it's honest to you
That's
in
what
the
I'm saying.
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do it. You
yeah.
know?
Like, if that's the, what's
What's real for
coming
you.
up and what's
Yeah.
real, you
Yeah.
know? And the thing is, when one starts to cut or duck over any of these in whatever which direction, then that's the weary,
Yeah.
right? Because if one's like honesty, their honest thing is to be in front or whatever, to perform or do all that, and then now they're ducking it because whatever reason,
Yeah.
you know,
That's facts.
that's gonna hurt as much as the
That's
person
facts.
who is their own thing and then
That's facts.
feeling like they need in order whatever to be considered something and either to
Yep.
be performing it or putting it out there, and then they're ducking their own honesty
Yeah.
for that, and it's like,
That's why the common denominator to me is always about degrees of wakefulness.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
the degrees of self-knowledge, self-aware, knowing yourself
mhm.
to whatever capacity you can.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like, I think that's the main point you're making. Like, wherever you're honest at in the moment,
yeah,
right? That's going to change in different seasons of life, probably moment to moment, day to day.
right,
But like, whatever level of wakefulness you can choose from now
right,
is the choice you make. You know what I mean?
mhm,
No shame, no judgment on it. But as you grow, as you wake up more, pivot,
yeah,
choose based on that.
mhm,
Maybe you lean in further, maybe you pull back.
mhm,
But like, honest to what it is that you are. And even if being truthful or honest to what you are in the moment,
yeah,
you know, like, oh, I'm supposed to pull back, but I'm going to keep going.
yeah,
It's a choice you're making. It's conscious,
mhm,
it's aware, it's mindfully made. It's not being
yeah,
dragged around by some, shadow need
mhm,
that's quietly fragmenting you.
mhm,
You see this happening in a lot of artists.
yeah,
Their gift is so powerful, touches so much of the world. And because this relationship between self-awareness and external reality is fragmented,
mhm,
they start to fall apart
yeah,
right before our eyes. And we're receiving so much. Yes, give me more. Oh my God, you sound amazing. Give me more, give me more.
mhm,
And they're enjoying it, feeding off of it. But because of the lack of self-awareness, they have no idea that their body or their mind or their somewhere in their life, their relationship with their kids is being destroyed.
mhm,
That awareness is common denominator.
yeah,
And how and to what degree you can be aware. And it can't just be a thought thing like, okay, I'm going to be aware of this because I'm thinking this way now. It has to be completely somatic as well as part of your thought life.
mhm,
Because if it's not backed up by the body somatically, is a fleeting thought
yeah,
that you constantly got to try and ground in your mind until it's repetitiously going like a noetic prayer. But until it's in your nervous system, there's always the possibility of it, of your awareness and your thought life, even
Yeah.
in your body and your life in general, being overtaken by external reality,
Yeah.
external input, the distraction of society or the people
Mm-hmm.
who are getting good things from you, saying more, 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 more,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you eating up the payoff. I feel praised. I feel this way. I feel that way.
Yeah.
And then you find them swinging into the other way. Now you want all solitude. Now you're disassociating in drugs or sex or whatever it could be to keep you from realizing how disconnected you are from yourself.
Mhm.
Not that sex or anything else is bad. I'm just saying doing it where it's just a lack of awareness,
Yes,
a
yes.
lack of choice is a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
So the isolation as well as completely out there on the other end can be a trauma response. The common denominator is what capacity of self-awareness do I have to be at choice in the matter of my life and my craft,
Mm-hmm.
or the burdens and responsibilities that I accept or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Antoine.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And that this, to your point, in that example, for that artist, when it starts, it's like, oh, there's this beautiful energy. There's, okay, they're working on their craft, da, 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 and then there's the people now, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me, and then now it's like, oh, now that burden comes in. Now there's the heaviness. Now having to deal with the burden, going that complete isolation, or dealing with the things that you were talking about in order to deal with that. And because now it's a double-edged sword, because it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because they are feeding off of it, and they're also being being taken for a ride in the whole thing. In the journey, the whole journey becomes
and none of it matters if you are at center,
right,
whether they're getting good and bad or whoever's none of it matters. You are the center of the storm when you are waking up to yourself, and you get to look these people, whomever, in the face and say, no, this is the boundary, or yes. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are like, from the level of thought, damn, I got to do it because I got to pay this bill, or I got to da-da-da-da-da, and this is what's practical. From all that level, then hell yeah, you got to consider.
Yeah.
But when you're waking up more and more, the choices made, because it's not even a choice, it's clarity. You're seeing clearer. So it's like you're not having to do the math on it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh shoot, I see this chair is in front of me. I'm not going to hit my foot purposely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what is, Antoine, your practice for being aware over time? You know what I mean? What are you doing to allow your thought life to be brightened or highlighted or enlightened by a level of presence and self-awareness that's can't do anything else but be radically honest? You know? What is that? Whether it's self-reckoning, meditation, or maybe music, or whatever the thing is, what's waking you up to yourself more and more, Antoine?
Yeah.
What relationships mirror that? Or what relationships ask you to pose and put on a mask, Antoine? You know what I mean? What places reinforce that quality of experience with yourself, where your no can be as honest as it can be with the level of wakefulness or capacity you have now, or your yes can be. Or when you override it, it could also be from a place of awareness. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, all of it. I mean, all of these things, everything that you shared is like true across the board, you know? And then they come up to the surface in different experiences as different things.
Facts.
Right? In whatever other topics that we talked about, boundaries, now we're talking about burdens or responsibilities. That degree of wakefulness kind of comes up in different experiences, and it presents itself and or the reality of the experience, because it mirrors it in some type of, like, it mirrors that awareness in some type of way is mirroring what is happening, or vice versa, whatever that dynamic is. You know what I mean? And it's just showing up or bubbling up in that particular moment or in that particular experience as that moment, whatever it is that's requiring, whether it's a responsibility, whether it's moving towards burden, whether it's moving, and the choice that's coming up, the choices that are rising with the with that awareness. You know what I mean? And it's very interesting because in some way, when I hear you kind of use that example of wakefulness, or there's a chair in front of me and there's more clarity, right? It's kind of like similar to the first card that you read. It's not, at least how I hear it, or maybe it's a mix of both. That it's not that one choice becomes very clear, maybe, but rather the field of possibilities increases.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So it's not like, oh, now clarity, now I know exactly this is the way. You know what I mean? But it can also show up on the field of like, the field of possibilities, right, is greater than the impossible, kind of to that point.
Yes.
You know, so
that's good.
Choice. Now it still has to be made, quote unquote, in that movement, but now it's coming.
You see,
it's more broader rather than a more minute. But the feeling might be like clarity in what the path may be. So there's like, depending on that moment and how it rises up.
I love this. I think I heard you mention an example with music at one point. I think we were in the circle and you did some things and we talked about those things afterwards, and you were saying how you're playing and then you're just witnessing yourself playing, you're watching or something from above. You might not have said above, but you it's coming through you. You're not necessarily doing it anymore. And from that vantage point, you said there was a choice where you could do this or that, or you could hear something and you put that in there. Like you had a range of possibility from that witnessing space, that more, in my opinion, more awake state or space you were in.
Yeah.
So when you chose, you heard something and put it in just a little, you didn't have to really choose your hands to do it. You sort of silently nudged from the witness space, maybe that much. I'm paraphrasing how you described it. And then the difference made a global difference in the playing and how it came out as sound. But from that perspective, the possibility is wide and probably endless, and it's not a working to have to do anything. It's like a effortless nudge, and the sound comes out differently in the way you want it. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
That's, in my opinion, the difference between degrees of wakefulness. Yeah.
And to that, because there's this other experience that comes in it and with it, and I've shared that with you before, and this is maybe closer to how you described it, or how I heard you describing, that clarity earlier, is that in a particular moment, let's say I'm playing music, and that space is there, and like I'm in that space and in that, and all of a sudden a new melody comes, and there's no, the clarity of it doesn't even present itself as a choice, doesn't even present itself as anything other than a going through.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm saying, that the field or the spectrum of which how these things may show up in that clarity, that in that moment I didn't have a choice. There was no choice. There was no quote unquote possibilities or this and that. There was just a passing through, right? Where in the example that you just shared, yeah, there's that witnessing, and then there's that all possibility, all different rhythms come
Yeah.
in, all
Yeah.
different ways of which I can engage with the material that I'm actually in,
Yeah.
right? And I'm to the ability of my skillfulness, right? This is where the whole vocation aspect kind of come in.
Mm-hmm.
To the ability of my technical skillfulness, I can
Mm-hmm.
let nudge it in this way or nudge it in
Yeah.
that way and dance with it, but from still within that ocean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it is where it's like there's no choice.
Yeah.
It doesn't even present
Seemingly,
as a
right?
choice.
Because you could choose not to listen to any of that and just stop, but you don't. You're open, totally open to yourself. You say there's not a choice.
No, I understand.
But
It's very interesting because it's like when I say there's no choice, what I mean by that, I mean is that there's no space between the sound and the utterance of the sound. That's what I mean.
This is what I mean when
Mhm.
I say you're not having to tally things
Right.
from this level of clarity. You don't have to say, well, the chair was right here and the bed was right there, and then the measurement from there to there. It all becomes clear.
Yeah.
And how you said that. Say that one more time.
There's no space between the melody and the utterance of it. Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah.
That is, to me, the clarity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the clarity. You know, when we talk about, I guess, enlightenment or witnessing or the zone or flow state, this is oftentimes maybe people, it's like something outside of myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually describing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why when the poet is in that pocket and they're writing, it's like, this is just coming through, like,
Yup.
or the singer, like, well, you see Whitney on the stage and she just like, at some point, her craft is her craft, wherever
Yeah.
it's at.
Yeah.
But at some point, when she was in her heyday, something else took over and came through, and it was just like, and you could see her feeling and experiencing it while she was delivering it. It was
Exactly.
like there was no math,
Yeah.
you know, but it was precision.
Yeah.
It was
precise.
technical, but
Yeah.
also fully embodied.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The union between thought and body, or mind and body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see this in artists and other people, or people when they're doing acts of love like this. Somehow something is coming through rather
Mhm.
than like, I'm gonna do this strategically for
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in vocations you do need to work on your craft and perfect your craft if that's what you choose to do. But like, when this other thing happens, and sometimes, you know, maybe the craft, the perfecting of it allows for this other thing to happen for some
For
people.
sure.
You know what I mean? For other people, it's just not, you know, it's just not the case. You know,
Mhm.
it's just a part of what's already there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it informs the craft rather
Yes.
than the craft opening up a space for it. Both ways is
Yes,
the case.
yes.
But anyway, I say all that to say that, like, that moment of zone or flow or witness, or, you know, however you want to describe it, is clarity, is less dull than waking up, you know, out of your sleep and trying to make it
Yeah.
to the bathroom in the dark, and you're still exhausted and tired and, you know, maybe hungover. What the hell? Whatever it is very different from waking up and being awake
Yeah.
and conscious.
Yeah.
You know, eyes open, walking in the dark, and there's a level of your eyes orienting to the dark and you can move through.
Mhm.
There's a level of waking up, eyes closed, and I can make it to the bathroom and turn the light on. I know where everything is. I haven't hit my foot. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm. Mhm.
degrees to wakefulness,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and degrees to this unconscious dullness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everything in between is different capacities of choice, responsibility, and burden that we wake up to every moment in our relationship between state and station.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I love how you brought it back to. Oh, and we gotta read some of the comments also.
Oh, we got comments. Oh, shoot.
Mona in the house.
Mona, what up?
And I love how you brought it back to that responsibility and burden stuff, and because if we're maybe just staying a little bit on the vocation example, and the example that you gave, that some people, the talent itself or that flow give rise to the capacity, and then vice versa, meaning like they experience that, and then they're like, oh, wait a second, uh, there's something that I have, and sometimes it's they experience maybe a small little taste of it, and then they work on the craft in order to increase that capacity in order to receive, which is interesting. And I've experienced that even recently, like just trying to practice on some stuff with music, and then just seeing the technical limitations of which I'm at, which is like, I'm like, and sometimes it creates frustration because I hear a certain rhythm, or I hear certain things that I can't necessarily technically play, right? So then it's like, oh, the capacity to actually play it, that needs work, right? And at the same time, the flip side of that is, in a space of like that flow or whatever, um, in a space of complete relaxation, the simplest thing carries the heaviest space. You know what I mean? Like there's a space of which there's nothing to prove, and it's just so simple, and no technicality, quote unquote. When I say technical, like no elaborate technical stuff that is actually required in order to like be in that space. You know what I mean? So for example, you hear somebody like Phillips Glass, who's a piano player, and his melodies is like dun 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 dun, like very simple. And in the beginning, like reading more about him back in the day when I got into him, people were like brushing off, like man, what is that? But then going to his concerts, he's just playing something so simple, but he's so sure of the station of which he's in, that you can't deny the felt sense of which he's playing from.
Yes.
So you experience that. So it's like, it's very interesting, and that's where I think that responsibility is like hovering in that space, of like, he's still an amazing piano player, you know what I mean? So, that he took it upon himself as a responsibility of that taste that maybe he had of being in the zone, and like, I like, it's a responsibility to create a bigger capacity of which that can be in. And also now, even that I'm talking about it, meditation is almost like that too, where it's like there's a taste, and then, at least for me, it's like meditation becomes the practice to increase that capacity. Why? Because it's like there's almost a responsibility that comes after that taste. That's like, like there's no way other than that. Like there's no escape from that taste that was there. So now the meditation or the practices become a responsibility that I can put my attention, my energy, my love, and all of that kind of stuff in order to like, okay, it's here, it's real, and I have the choice. I have the it's within me to make that choice, to expand my capacity for that taste to really be more simmered and simmered and simmered. So it works in all of these different things that require our attention to be put, and to be time to be put into these things.
I love that you're describing this, because, of course, I want to bring it back to the nervous system, of course, because like when we describe these things, like what is happening in your brain
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when those moments of witnessing or practice or both simultaneously is happening, like what is happening to neurological pathways? What is happening to the dendrites and synapses in your in your brain?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening to the neurotransmitters in your gut
Mm-hmm.
that reflect the neurotransmitters in your heart and in your head, in your brain? What's happening to this nervous system, this mind body coherence that allows for this level of perception to visit in that kind of way?
Yeah.
You know, they say something in school always: neurons that fire together wire together.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you learn to walk. It's how you learn English after Arabic being your first language. It's how everything is occurring. These
Mm-hmm.
neurological pathways are being built and pruned and built in our head, and experience changes the brain, as my mentor Frederick Travis, Dr.
Yeah.
Frederick Travis, always talks about. You know what I mean? The brain is a river, it's not a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So when these neurological pathways continually be set up in certain ways, speaking in respect to this idea of craft and vocation, you know, anything you're repeating over and over again becomes ultimately some level of vocation in your
Yeah.
brain, how the architecture is built up, you know, and through a broadband coherence of these neurological pathways, all lighting up,
Mm-hmm.
creating this alpha coherence across the brain. You know what I mean? In relationship to theta and gamma and everything else that's going on, it allows for the hardware
Yeah.
that these levels of perception can be experienced through the human body and nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. These epiphanies about God, these witnessing qualities, these going into the zone, into the flow state, all of these have neurobiological correlates in our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so when we're practicing the piano, we're creating neurological pathways
Yeah.
that relate to that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you go into the zone, it's because, not because, but a part of that is because the hardware has been situated in the way in this body that you get to experience it when you're playing the piano
Yep.
so consistently. You
Yep.
know what I mean? That
Yep.
something else visits.
Mm-hmm.
And that something else, from my perspective, from perspective of many ancient traditions, is the deepest sense of yourself,
Yeah.
the larger version of yourself, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Elohim,
Mm-hmm.
the God self, the Christ consciousness,
Yeah.
all of those versions, the Saint of Kamel,
Oh, insan
in
kamil,
Samuel Kamel,
the perfected
the
human.
perfected human, they're all through different languages and different lenses pointing at this same quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And the only thing that we all have in common through all these traditions and all these generations across time and space is this physical body,
Right.
through which we experience absolutely everything through.
Yep.
It is the talisman, you know, that allows
Yeah.
us to focus this power and energy of our deepest sense of self, this jiva, this soul,
Mm-hmm.
this thing that's giving this physical substance animation
Yeah.
in a certain direction in terms of time, energy, and attention,
Mm-hmm.
that allows this greater sense of ourself to emerge
Mm-hmm.
and engage with reality in a way where everything seems to be orchestrated and working in synthesis.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I love it. Okay, maybe a small little break and see what some comments. One says, well, there's few that I'm gonna read and see depending on I don't know. It doesn't tell me when these came through.
And it's Mona and who else there?
Mona.
Okay, what up, Mona?
We convince ourselves there is a reason. Oh, and I think this is maybe talking specifically about the burden and or responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes within a burden we convince ourselves of a particular reason why we choose this or that
Yes.
way, right?
Uh-huh.
This is like talking to ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, convincing ourselves to creating justifications. That's what comes to mind, right? Creating justifications for our own why we made this, why we made that.
Yeah.
And we always create justifications.
Facts.
Always. That is the ground. And then she was laughing about the concept of performing integrity, right? And then she asked a question. I wonder if it makes a difference if we are following inner cues versus external cues. Would that help us discern our responsibility versus burdens placed on us by others? We'll come back to that one because I like that question. Also, she said, has her wondering if there is a private versus public self in the expression of poetry.
Ooh, that's good.
Entrusted feels a bit hierarchical and hence the sense of burden. Oh, talking about these things being entrusted, giving as a trust, which is what you were talking about. And then she confirmed and assured that you don't have to read them. You don't have to read your poetry. Okay, but yeah, let's go back to these two points. You know, if it makes a difference if we are following inner cues versus external cues when it comes to helping us discern our responsibility versus burdens, right? And then we'll also go back to the poetry, which maybe these two together can be, is there a different private versus public versus private self in the expression of poetry or an expression of art in general, right? And I want to throw in here with the whole burden and discernment and responsibility, the whole idea of, one of the quote unquote shared responsibility as far as humanity, right, is, or maybe one way to look at it is this planet and nature, right? That is somehow, the reason why I use the word entrusted is because like within the culture I was brought up and within the Sufi tradition itself, there's the idea of stewardship, right? So there's a trust of which this earth, we're quote unquote entrusted and we're stewards in that. So the relationship is a relationship of stewardship versus ownership. But regardless of the point of view, right, there's somehow a collective responsibility as far, like how you say, we all have these bodies, no matter what tradition, and also at the same time, no matter what, we all are on this rock that's floating in the middle of nowhere.
Facts.
Right? So I don't know how this ties in, but this question of external cues versus inner cues when it comes to discernment between responsibilities and burdens. And I do think that's a good starting point.
In terms of distinguishing what is burden or responsibility?
Yeah. That not necessarily it is the end of it or all of it, right?
Yeah.
But that question of, hey, what's the origin of this right now, in this moment? Not like, you know what I mean? Where is this really coming from? And that external can be actually inside of our mind as well, right? Because I can hear a voice that's actually somebody else's voice that's just saying that, right? Versus that inner that feels more like from this space. That's
yeah.
What do you think of?
External cues and inner cues. I think what you're pointing at is incredibly relevant. Like, depends on how we're defining internal or external cues, right? For me, my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, I don't always count those as internal cues.
Right.
Those, for the large part, actually, as I get older, my thought, feelings, and emotions become more external cues than internal. So I look at them as data points that's coming in, and I like to assess them across the backdrop of the level of wakefulness that I have.
When you say feeling, you're distinguishing between feelings and emotion. Let me see if I'm on the same page. But that feeling is a sensational body thing, and emotion, something like anger and or sadness and or happiness, where feeling is a tightening in the chest, a expansion of like that. Okay.
Yes.
That on these three levels, whether it's sensational feeling, oh, I'm feeling a rush of blood to my head.
Yes.
That's a feeling versus I am angry. That's an
Yes.
emotion versus
Yes.
a thought. Somebody just cut me off.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Perfect. 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 And so there are a spectrum or degrees to internal and external cues, I
Mhm.
think. And I don't think they can be contrived. I
Mhm.
think that if a person identifies as their thought, feelings, and emotion as themselves,
Mhm.
then that's their internal cues. And there's no judgment against that. Like, because oftentimes when I'm feeling sleepier
Mhm.
or more dull or whatever
Mhm.
have you, is based on my thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then sometimes I'm the watcher of those things
Mhm.
and I can make choices for it or against it,
Mhm.
right? So at some level of wakefulness,
Mhm.
external cues um, begin in what mainstream society might call internal cues, right?
Mhm.
But at a level of wakefulness, this witness quality becomes more prominent and you become the listener more than you are feeling dragged around by your thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're a listener while being dragged around by your thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think the deciding factor, as usual, there you go, probably laugh again, is this level of awareness,
Yeah.
the ability to have this, even whatever piece of transcendental consciousness or witness quality or self-awareness that you can have, or to know as the witness, so that the other external cues are data points that are either negotiated instinctively based on a level of clarity
Mhm.
where you can make a choice from
Mhm.
because there's more clarity,
Mhm.
or you know, you use what you got to get what you need. So if what you have access to in the moment, Antoine, is thoughts, feelings, and emotions, I'm going to calculate what I need to do about that data and make a choice.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Even if it's instinctive,
Yeah.
right? Like, so where I'm looking from, oftentimes, I shouldn't say often, sometimes is this level of more capacity of witness,
Mhm.
more space between my thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the person listening to these thoughts
Mhm.
and feeling these feelings and emotions. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And then being able to like either just be silent with it or make a choice inside of it. But from that perspective, from this perspective of um, becoming more awake, the internal cue would be this silent witness base
Yeah.
of awareness that
Mhm.
grows in its wakefulness,
Yeah.
um, in terms of what my nervous system can be awake to,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so that's my input about it. But without that, I think you use what you need to use,
Yeah.
In terms of the artist, though, like if is what this conversation is around, this part of the conversation, yeah, I think they're subject to these external cues as much as they're subject to these internal cues in terms of thought, feelings, and emotions. And if there's no buffer, like this transcendental awareness that becomes more and more stable in the nervous system from having the architecture in terms of neurological pathways and the whole brain working and nervous system working in concert over time, growing in its capacity to
Mhm.
sustain a level of perception
Mhm.
that allows you to see and witness thoughts, feelings, emotional, and external factors, then you have to use what you have
Yeah.
access to,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's such a yeah, I love everything that you said, and there's a point when you talked about the artist and how the external and the internal. So one thing that I from what I got from what you said
Mm-hmm.
is even to what seems to be an internal cue can be experienced and witnessed as external.
Mm-hmm.
So feeling, emotion, thoughts
Mm-hmm.
can in some way also be experienced as external
Mm-hmm.
in relationship to the witness. There's a
Yes.
gap and there's a witness, and to that relationship these things are being observed. So there's a gap of
Yeah.
which this is being observed right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, quote unquote, they are external
Yeah.
within that container. Doesn't not external
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they don't matter or
Right.
that they have no
Yeah.
weight in which how I'm
Yeah.
choosing in which way to do.
Yeah.
These are data points that are extremely relevant and probably maybe a little bit more relevant than external being something quote unquote outside, right? This is more, but still within experientially can be looked at as external, quote
Yeah.
unquote.
Because of the language we're using right
Yes,
now.
yes.
Because really, it would in a lesser degree of wakefulness than wakefulness or as a station, because ultimately it would be how you said eventually.
Yeah.
With the utterance and the melody.
Right. Right. And to some, depending on that degree, those things are really the most inner, quote unquote, cues that they can access.
Facts.
So then there's that. So, okay, so then let's put this on as part of that inner experience. Let's put this here. And then with the artist, let's say, who also there's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the external input. So think of the assembly of lovers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, within that context, the listening that's taking place, the the perception is almost everything is becoming internal.
Mm-hmm.
Rather,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
it's the same thing. It's just there's a quality slightly difference. You know what I mean? Where that one is like there's the witness, and even the most inner is external, quote unquote.
Yes.
And then this one, everything inner, everything even outside is actually internal.
That is, to me,
Mhm.
what I felt like, or what I think, or thought you were describing by melody and utterance being simultaneous.
Mm-hmm.
That is that which you just described.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what it is. This witness quality, or these stages of wakefulness, which you say is what you would say all inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not overtaken or over identified with.
Right.
Like there's this saying in the Vedic tradition. It says, "I am that, and
Right.
all this is that." It's describing what you just illustrated just there.
Yeah.
You know, in that assembly of lovers space, the wholeness of felt is all. It all becomes one thing, and that one thing is you.
Right.
You know,
Right.
your deepest sense of self.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the experience of these two things that can be simultaneous, can be independent, can be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's yeah. So like the cues, inner outer cues, like it's the subjectivity of it and the malleable, what is that word?
Malleability.
Yeah, malleability of it is fascinating. And when I'm saying, for me, the question also came from the fact that I don't know when you two live stream, but there was a ring in me that made me look on YouTube. That is an inner cue for me. If I had a plan,
That's
if
really,
I had a plan, externa. Oh, what? Let me see.
That's really fire, because we don't be knowing sometime when we go live either.
Yo,
we
facts.
know Friday, but we don't be knowing the time.
We don't know
sometime.
what. Yeah, exactly. And
What was the rest of that she said though?
That is an inner cue for me. If I had a plan, and then I don't know what the last word is, which is externa. Or maybe if I had an external plan.
Yeah. She missed it. She
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, I think these are the cues. Yeah, it would be external. These are the cues that, and it happens where it's like the possibility, almost going back to that card, right? About impossibility is very thin line in the sea of possibilities.
Yes.
And these things of the ringing that comes in, or Antoine, I'm gonna call him, get a text, or Antoine calls back, you know what I mean? And like boom, 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 you know. And then there's places where it's like it's very, very common, right?
Yeah.
And these are, yeah, I think seeing that as an inner cue, um, and choosing to see it as an inner cue, I think
Yeah.
does more, um, more good
Yeah.
in one's experience.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I agree. I agree. These things that they're just there, they
Yeah.
just come in. You know, as a like boom, as a nudge, and if there's if the awareness is not there, if the capacity is not there, if the sensitivity is not there, it can be easily missed,
Yeah.
you know, or disregarded. But meanwhile, it came,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, right,
Yeah.
right then and there, and even that, there's a sense of development
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that can take place with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but before, uh, before wrapping up, I guess
Yeah.
I want to, yeah, like she said she came in 15-20 minutes. She's like, I must have ignored it for a while. That's funny. But the whole idea of responsibility, how do we reckon? How do we? Is it really a responsibility living on Earth collectively? Like, is there a responsibility for that?
Mm.
If there is that an inherent quote unquote responsibility? Meaning, like, it's not necessarily cultural or ideologically or um, kind of coming philosophical,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
coming from that space. um, like is it within the human constitution to naturally take care as being nature itself? Like, that's the thing that I always have to remind myself,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes from the observing you kind of remove yourself from nature as if you're not nature itself.
Yeah.
um, you know, but that responsibility that is so collective that almost there's no escape from it in a sense, but somehow we constantly choosing to escape from it, you know. um, does it always present itself as a responsibility? Does it
Mm.
over time, when it's overlooked, becomes a burden because now time um,
Yeah.
has gone, so you know what I mean. um, so that is kind of like an example, I guess, of a responsibility that mm,
Mm.
inevitable. Like, it's almost
Yeah.
like
Mm.
just by the sheer fact of existing,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's kind of like it's
The
in it.
responsibility of being a good steward over the planet.
Yeah.
I think my opinion is that it's just as likely for humans to be destructive to the planet as it is for them to be constructive in the planet. I think destruction is part of nature just as much as creation and maintenance. Um, and that the human beings that we are um, have the possibility, more so than the responsibility, to be just as creative as we are destructive, and vice versa. And I think that is what's playing out in society. Um, and I would feel like as we become more awake to ourselves and our relationship with nature, then what you described, that responsibility, that desire to be a good steward over the planet, and at the very least, our environment, the part of we're living in, um, will become more uh, prevalent. But I think that as a species, reflecting nature, there's just as much right to be destructive as there is to be creative. I think the earth itself is doing that, reflecting maybe the microcosm of a cell that, you know, goes through different changes and phases and an eventual death. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think ultimately the planet probably will be okay, but we will not if we keep sort of like behaving at these levels of self destruction in terms of our environment and our planet. I think the planet will
May
probably
not be
get rid
okay.
of us before, may not. I think the planet will more likely get rid of us before it gets rid of itself. And we'd probably have to leave it, but the planet will probably be here long after our species has if left the
Like
planet, left the
that's a
earth.
possibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because
think
there
so.
is like, uh, I think that probably would have been true up until, let's say, nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff came into where like the atmosphere itself can be,
Just blown. So you mean
you know what I
in
mean?
terms of like blowing the earth apart?
No, like that just the atmosphere itself, what makes life.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Also, it will be drastically changed, but I think the earth, the planet will still be here. It's us who won't be able to live here.
I mean, if you mean a floating rock like the moon,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
you know,
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
absent of life,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
In the span of time, though, this planet won't be here forever.
Well, true. Yeah.
You know, the sun won't be there forever.
Yeah.
You know, so there will be a destructive element to this earth and to the sun at some point, unless we figure out some level of craft and science that allows that not to happen. But I don't want to use that as an excuse for, oh, well, let's create more destruction since we're all going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point I'm trying to make. I think the point I'm trying to make is that creation, maintenance, and destruction is also a part of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the value of destruction right now is more predominant in terms of how we're relating to the earth and our willful ignorance of how we need to treat our immediate environment and our um, further environment on this planet. But I guess that was my long way of answering a question that I think that yes, it is inherent in us, but I think that's at you know different stages of awareness and capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything else we've said today, like it's a matter of what are you awake to in terms of your self-referential experience of yourself, and then as you grow into experience of, oh, like I'm not necessarily separate from my environment.
Mm-hmm.
I am that. All this is that. To quote the
Yeah.
Vedic tradition, you know, and also that idea of creation, maintenance, and destruction is also an idea in those terms that I got from the Vedic tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. To some extent, I think the the inherent um, responsibility, I guess, or stewardship of the land or of Earth, maybe overweighs like the. I think I see destruction
Mm-hmm.
on different scales,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning like mm, volcano can be described as destructive, and also part of some kind of a cycle where it brings life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, a particular tree gets sick and dies, and then mushroom kind of emerges. One can look at that as destruction or destructive, and then there's there's somewhat of an element when a nuclear weapon is brought that is destructive. It's destructive, but not life-giving. It's not. There's the cycle of which
Mm.
and I don't know. Maybe that's part of my ignorance. I don't know if but like
Because I imagine at some point in time,
the radioactive, whatever, all
would
that kind
probably
of
go
stuff,
away,
and
right?
yeah, sure, but not necessarily that it's uh, bringing something, um, like for example, maybe the volcano might bring certain minerals
Yeah.
after it might be experienced as a destruction, like, oh, okay, destruct,
Mm-hmm.
there was a mountain there and no longer was a mountain, there's a mountain because there was a huge eruption. um, and I think these are the things that where the responsibility, I guess, kind of,
Uh,
you know what I mean? Like I can see, um, okay, like okay, because you use the example of nature, like okay, and a lion eats a
gazelle or
gazelle
something.
or something like that. Even okay, let's say human eats a bird, or okay, there's a destruction in that way, um, and it mirrors nature as far as like consuming energy and consuming food
Yes.
in that way. And then there's just like a level of magnitude that is like,
Destructive, like Hiroshima kind of thing.
yeah, that's like mega, that
Yeah.
is completely absent of, you know what I mean?
But is it though? Like for our value system, that was absolutely disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
right? But is this? What do they say about Is it in people's nature to take advantage of whom and what they perceive as weaker, to destroy a whole society or enslave them or take over their land? Is this similar to what we do when we eat animals? Is this similar? I know you can't, you know, make an animal the value of a human. Most people can't do that. But like this, I'm trying to point at the nature aspect. Like when you see one system, if you will, taking over another system, this destruction, this violence, from my level of value system and worldview, calling it that. But from another value system and worldview, they, what is that phrase that people say? The weak or the strong or whatever, only the strong survive,
Oh,
or some
yeah,
kind of thing like
survival
that,
of the
or
fittest.
survival of the fittest and all this stuff. You know, I know there's other worldviews other than that, but it looks like the predominant operating system running here and for a while has been running here is that. I see, you see it, I see it, in terms of how we treat each other individually, how we treat each other in general,
Yeah.
as different societies and different tribes, how we treat the animals, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? We don't necessarily need them to survive in terms of eating, but
Mm-hmm.
at least in this privileged society, you know what I mean? For most people, privileged uh, in terms of more so than a lot of other societies in the world. You know what I mean? Like, but we still eat them. You know what I mean? There's this something, in nature or in how nature is presenting itself through the lenses we have right now, seems to be operating off this kind of operating system,
Mm-hmm.
where seemingly coherent or stronger systems exploit the seemingly weaker systems,
Mm-hmm.
paying no attention to the value of life, or
Mm-hmm.
the value of agency,
Mm-hmm.
where self agency is sort of a lightly maybe narcissistic operating system on the planet, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's love still present. I know there's care, but there is something else going on there too. That's the lion eating the gazelle, that could maybe be reflected in, you know, how we as people exploit one another. I don't know. Maybe that's too far of
Yeah.
a bridge, but I see it, and oh yeah, because I mean, a lion eating gazelle is in its own nature doing its own thing. I don't know that we need to eat the animals or exploit one another.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But there is something there that is just a destructive quality inherent in reality
Mm-hmm.
that is showing itself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but there is also this other quality of creation
Mm-hmm.
that is constantly, you know, in
Yeah.
in relation to that destruction, whether it's on the human level or the animal level.
Mm-hmm.
I separate those because I feel like we're all still a part of nature, including
Yeah.
how destructive we are as humans, including, you know, all these things. Like, even imagine, like, we have dropping bombs on people, which is crazy. Is there any relationship in reality, um, in terms of the constitution of nature or the universe?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any relationship between that and the comet or whatever hit the earth that made the dinosaurs distinct?
Mm-hmm.
Distinct? Is that the word?
Not this,
Extinct.
extinct. Yeah.
Extinct. Right? Like, I don't know. I see some quality of destruction there that is reflected in the possibilities that the human nature can live.
Mm-hmm.
The spectrum of possibilities between creation and destruction.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. I think I hear it. I agree to some extent with it, as far as like the mapping of like what nature is doing and what humans are choosing to do, even though humans are nature. Um, the thing is, oh yeah, I hear all that, and like there's some part of the mapping that doesn't fit all the way for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and maybe that's because of like
Still eating animals?
no,
No,
not
I'm joking.
necessarily
I'm joking.
the choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where it's like you said, like okay, a lion eating a gazelle.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Is this instinct?
yeah, it's just it's doing what it's doing. You know. And I guess what you're saying is like, is human doing what human does? You know, is just human doing what human doing? Um, yeah, I think to some extent, sure, right? Because we found ourselves
Mm-hmm.
here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to another extent, hopefully there's a choice also that's taking place, um, or maybe that's what the responsibility is pointing towards, that choice. Like, what choices are we making
Yeah.
as a species
Yeah.
living on this floating rock?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, but if that is even so challenging on a personal level, or on a small unit level, imagine that being the case, with 8 billion people.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know and yeah, but there's something about that. whether it's responsibility or whether it's, I don't know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of just started to color, or not color, like um, point to even how we experience life
Yes.
as species on this planet, what we do, how we live,
Yeah.
like the entirety of it, the entirety of our experience in this moment, in this point of time, that right now we're having this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because it's different than somebody who was living, let's say, 2,000 years ago, and or, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, yeah. And, as a species, as humans, we've been we've been on this planet for what, 300, 400,000 years. Some people say a million something.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a long time. And at what point did these decisions of, were they, was there some level of awareness and consciousness about the planet of which they're living on?
Mm.
Was there not? Was it not even part of a thing? It was just doing what naturally human does, and then throughout time, and then maybe more technology, more what we call consciousness and awareness rising,
Mm. Yeah.
that this distance between nature and human,
Mm-hmm.
that gap became more and more
Mm-hmm.
apparent.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I probably wouldn't look at it as a distance between the human and nature unless we're talking about being out in the woods and stuff like that. But if we're talking about like the nature of reality, I don't see necessary gap. It looks like itself to me at least. But I do think, or maybe I read, I don't know if I think it, I believe it because it feels good to believe. It's useful for me to believe that these different traditions talk about a time, like let's say the Christian tradition talk about the time when the lion shall lay down with the lamb.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard this before?
Mm-hmm.
And there should be peace on earth and things like that. And I think they point to a different quality of relationship to the nature of reality. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even in the Vedic tradition, they speak about a time in a season called Sat Yuga, and this is a time of enlightenment on the whole planet. So the nature of how reality is expressing itself gets these qualities of harmony and diversity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's more predominant, where the differences aren't predominant, where there's me against you, or the value of destruction is no longer prominent.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there in ways it needs to be there, but it's not yeah it's not overpowering um, reality in a way where we see it reality through this lens
Yeah.
and express in these ways. Now, I don't know if this Sat Yuga directly is a one-to-one correlation with this idea in the Christian text about peace on earth and the lion shall lie down with lambs, but I do know that these traditions are pointing to a time where, you know, hopefully this responsibility you're pointing at in this um, agreed burden of stewarding the earth um, and stewarding ourselves appropriately, maybe this is the pathway towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the self referral, the self awareness,
Mm-hmm.
coming in coherence with ourself. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi said each individual is one unit of world peace. So it
Yeah.
matters how I'm engaging with myself and I'm engaging with reality.
Mm-hmm.
And as more of us start becoming at peace with ourself in the different levels of self that we have that operate in a more integrated wholeness rather than a fragmented reality, I think we may see more of us being way less destructive in society and maybe ushering in a dawn of the age of enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
or peace on earth, as they say in the Christian tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right now, maybe it's in my system, in my awareness as like, oh, I read this before, and when I experience love or the flow state or witness quality, I relate to reality differently when with those levels of awakeness. I relate to not wanting to be messy and not wanting to be extra destructive or even live in that kind of environment. And then it fades and I fall back to, the default, which is some sleepiness and hitting my toe on the furniture in front of me and a messy room and stuff like that. Like I think all of those are reflective of the ways back to destruction and incoherence in our own bodies, mind, and life, and the other way in terms of coherence, creating more coherence in our life, in our immediate environment, how we keep ourselves in our relationships, and then also our world. Now, of course, it don't always have to be like that. There are some people who are going to be like, nah, I don't care nothing about wakefulness. I'm taking care of the planet. You know what I mean? That's where their wakefulness is at. You know what I mean? That's their vocation.
Exactly.
But like for the majority of the people, and I'm speaking in general terms, even though I said majority, I think there's going to be a self-reckoning that has to occur. In terms of our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with our planet.
That's a good point, because even earlier on you brought the example or the point of insan al-kamil, the perfected or whole human being within the Sufi tradition. Within that tradition, the responsibility of that human, or another name for that human, is khalifa, which is the steward. So the maturity of that becoming wholeness, coming into wholeness within oneself, that maturity is actually a maturity of stewardship. That within that tradition, whatever, is where the microcosm and the with the micro and the macro are reflected in that human being in wholeness, right? And then that human being is the steward in that moment, the reflector, the all there is, you know what I mean? Because it's combining both of these things at the same time here on earth, so even in that regards, the journey itself of maturity and the journey itself of becoming whole, undivided, no division and no fragmentation, is a journey of stewardship. That, according to that tradition, is a natural response of the relaxation of that oneness. That there's a return to your innate beingness. And because of that innate beingness, stewardship is already automatically within it. That it's not an additional thing that needs to be taken on, but it's a natural blooming of that wholeness that comes and takes place.
This is exactly, I totally agree. I think this is exactly what I mean in terms of like, with the clarity, you don't have to do the math.
Right.
It's just there. You know what I mean? And with different degrees of waking up to this idea of perfect human or this embodied state, I guess a person would become more and more coherent in the way they deal with themselves in nature. But also I think in terms of this idea of spiritual discernment and are you carrying others' burdens? Can someone who's further along on the journey then look at me and say, hey, Antoine, you need to be taking care of the earth, and or you need to be vegetarian or vegan because these factory farms, what they're producing in the air, but yet you're still, eating meat or whatever. And you say that's the way you grew up, da da da. What I mean? You could do something different right now. You know what I mean? They don't got no idea of any of my circumstances, but they could project it on me. And depending on where I'm at, if I'm feeling like they're right, I should be doing that, then I'm going to try my best to get to it because it's also a burden or a responsibility that I'm taking on for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But if I haven't, and I start trying to live in a direction, how do you relate to that in terms of being a steward of the earth and someone projecting on you or not, any one of those things? Maybe you should eat less meat, or you should be vegan, or you should drink less water or use less water, whatever the going consensus is of how to be a better steward of our planet. How does one understand the difference between taking on the burden for themselves and the responsibility of it, or just trying to wear the burden because they don't want to be shamed or guilted?
Yeah.
So they want to pose or fake it till they make it. Like, how do you just
Yeah,
look at that?
I think it's the same mechanism that we've been talking about as far as these cues and where it's coming from and this and that. I think in, when you said like somebody uh, further along and on that journey and stuff like that, I think what will two things kind of come to mind. What will be more changing, I guess, or what can produce more change, right, is allowing for, instead of, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and focusing on the action, going deeper and focusing on what can give rise to that action to begin with. You know what I mean? And then go to that space, because the action can, like you said, it can be worn and then, I don't want, then can fade away. It can go this direction and that direction, and it can be muddled with shame and guilt and all these other things. But if the pointing at is towards the thing that gives rise to that action, then that can be felt. It can be really a sense of autonomy for that person, and then that choice is really their choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, with that said, I know it can also be, things can be time sensitive, and things can be like, yeah, we got no time to reach within, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Within that. And I think, there's a personal journey with that, kind of, to everything what we were saying, on how to discern whether it's your own burden and responsibility versus the other, and giving that gap and perception and all of that. And then, and this is my belief on that way, there is something that can be said, okay, to individuals, right? Oh, don't eat this or don't do that. And yet, it's like trying to heal a fish that's living in toxic water, right? And it's telling the fish, well,
swim over here,
figure out how to do this and figure out how to do that, right? Trying to heal the fish that's living in toxic water, where in reality, we got to look at the water, you know what I mean? And that water presents itself in our society as systems and as establishments and as institutions and as politics and as all of these things that are the toxic water. But yet we go to the fish, or people go to the fish, we go to the fish and say, you swim over there, go up a little more often so that you can get some oxygen, do this, and not talking about the toxic water that is the system, that is the institution, that is the associations, that is the organizations, all of these things that are the toxic water, even though there are people too.
I was about to say,
there are people too in themselves, but then there's the narrative of these institutions and systems overshadows the small individual units of people. So the narrative becomes a stronger pull than the than one individual within that narrative or
Yeah.
within that system.
Yeah.
You know, so in that way, like that's kind of going
Yeah.
off the rail, but like in that sense, I think the first option of like, okay, hey, what real change can happen that can give rise to that action
Yeah.
rather than wearing the action itself,
Exactly.
knowing that sometimes doing the action can be the thing, no problem. And then the other point of like,
Yeah.
let's worry about the toxic water,
Yeah.
and then how can we address that, then constantly putting it on these small units and be like,
Yeah.
if you buy less of this,
Yeah.
the world
Yeah.
would be a better place, kind of. And then
Yeah.
these systems that are
Yeah.
like,
It's a two-edged sword, though, kind of, right?
Right.
Because we vote with our dollars, we vote with our time, attention, and energy, and these systems, to your point, over time, they help steer our time, attention, and energy in certain
steer.
drive our time, attention, and energy into a certain pattern, that
Right.
we move into, and then like, is a task to pull our time, attention, and energy and money out of there and vote differently based on where we put our time, attention, and energy. So this person who's going to that little fish in that pond and saying, hey, go this way. We're trying to get everybody to go this way, but go this way. I mean, yeah, keep working, I guess, right? If you can do it without causing shame and guilt, or maybe, depending, like you said, on the timing, maybe they might feel that judgment and guilt is necessary.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I do feel like your point is well received. Like you can't just look at this one fish. You have to look at the system and its impact on a fish. But each movement is probably started by one fish, and then a school of fish, and then we go in a different direction. So there's that. Also, I was thinking like, I say all that, and like, in order to like be aware of what that individual fish's capacity is up to that individual fish, as they move through, to have some self-reckoning and be emotionally honest and mentally honest and physically honest, or lean back into that transcendent nature as much as they can to kind of like help highlight what data to receive in what season. That's a lot, right? Because like I said, you use what you got to do what you need to do. If you don't have access to that, you don't have access to that.
Yeah.
But one thing it made me all think of is like, how I've been on this kick to like, I call it a kick that's revealing in itself, to eat more raw vegan foods and stuff like that. But man, when my family made all that food, oh my God.
Yo,
I hadn't had...
Wait a second. Let me just give context. Because you talk about when I was with you?
Yeah.
Because that food was amazing. That food, let me tell you, man, props. Because, okay, I just want to give context, like
it's actually true, right? Because when you come over to different places, some don't even usually eat sometimes, right? Here, he definitely ate. Yo, I don't know. I was trying to do my thing, right? Because, but when the systems, right, aren't always out there, right? Like just the media and everything, but like cultures of like families who mean well, and you feel loved when you eat their food and you with them. That food is banging, it tastes good. And if you got high blood pressure, if you got this kind of thing going on and this kind of thing going on, you know what I mean? Not to mention what it means in terms of the environment and everything like that. Then this ain't the thing for you like that. But I was going to have some. With that awareness, I still had a small little plate of food.
Yeah, right.
A little bitty plate of food I had. You know what I mean? A little teaspoon of everything.
Antoine got yelled at because
I did not get... first of all...
They got ran out of plates because he used so much.
First of all, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's messed up though. He tried like they were looking for plates and stuff like that. He's like, cause he took them all, something like that. And everybody looking at me. It's crazy, but that's not true. That's not what happened.
Oh my god!
I only had
Oh my god!
2 plates, one big one and one small one. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh, that was funny.
that was a fun time. We were celebrating my sister who transitioned last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm missing. I miss gravely.
Mm-hmm.
But that food was amazing. Now I'm romanticizing about it all the while, eating a different way to the capacity where you're at. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make choices from there, wherever you at.
Yeah.
You know, in your life, in your heart, in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
what serves you, what feeds you. But I do know that there's a greater vision for myself and society. And you know, maybe it's when I go to family functions, maybe that's the balance for me. Go to functions, you know, I partake, right? But as a way of life, as a rule of life, I don't keep those things in my household.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody got to find out what works for them as they're growing and moving in this
Yeah.
world and in different stages of wakefulness.
Right.
However, they might see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Engage with it within as a inner choice and inner awareness
Yeah.
of that responsibility that
Yeah.
one's choosing to live this way or live that way. Know if it's coming from the outside, if it's coming from the inside, to what capacity am I able to see what I'm seeing and experience what I'm experiencing, that I can make this choice or that choice.
Yeah.
And God willing, being able to do it consciously to the best of our ability.
Exactly.
You know, so that discernment can be a more felt experience and more consistent maybe during one's, to whatever
Yeah.
capacity during one's life, that
Yeah.
discernment of, okay, this is where I'm at, there's this, I'm choosing to do this way, and whether I know if it's from inside or I know even if it's outside, I'm still choosing to do this way, and that discernment becomes a proper choice,
Exactly.
conscious choice that one is making.
Right. And with that choice, understanding that there will be certain consequences that need to be paid.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Coming off. I think this will be the last of it. I want to see if there's something in here that, what the next, whatchamacallit?
Okay.
The next kind of segment that we might be walking into, because this is part of that series of the cost of awakening.
Yeah.
Right? These responsibilities, boundaries, burdens, conscious choices that we're making.
Spiritual bypassing or not.
Spiritual bypassing.
Self-deception, useful delusions, all of that.
Right. Oh, another thing that we didn't get to touch on, we'll touch on later maybe. Oh no, actually we did touch on inherited burdens. We touched on it in the sense of creativity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there is a different aspect that we didn't touch on, which is, did we? Like family trauma, family burdens in that sense.
Yeah.
We kind of did, but in the
Yeah.
context of creativity and stuff like that, I guess maybe we did. So next week, God willing, let's see what the next segment is. Talking about, I think still within the same, maybe segment 5 and 6 can get together, because it's moving into the freedom in making the relationship between freedom and the responsibility. How does that responsibility function in as part of a spiritual, in the spiritual life, and then also talking about the archetype that awakened whole human can look like.
Yes.
Yeah. So next Friday, God willing, we'll jump into that those topics. If you stayed with us this long, feel free to join our school community, where we talk more about this kind of stuff, where we also um, talk about the practice of accounting, of honesty, of looking at one's own choices,
Yes.
and these tools and mechanisms that can be practices that uh, widen maybe the gap of perception and of
Yeah.
awareness.
And we have some amazing, wise, and creative thinkers in this group that post and connect. And it's always something that I'm learning and experiencing in a new way, from relating to the poetry that people post, the opinions and questions that people post, the invitation that I get from certain people to post and share my own internal world. Like, feel free to be a part of this community, Diary of the Mystics, the Self-Reckoning. Yeah, and chill with us, grow with us.
I love that.
Wait, before you let go,
grow with us.
Before you let go, what is that statement, that quote? Choose the companions before you choose, that you got from the Sufi tradition.
Oh, well, I say it in Arabic and then try to translate it.
Please do.
Because it rhymes. الصديق قبل الطريق. Choose your companion before choosing the path. Giving weight to, doesn't matter, not that the path doesn't matter, but like really the companions on the path is the path. In a sense, right?
Yeah.
So choose your companionship before choosing the path. That the companions make or break, in a sense, the path.
Oh, I just think that's so beautiful. You know, I always like to hear him say it, just because it makes me think about the people who've come into our lives through Babel Island, and through the Diary of a Mystic and everything we've been doing for the last 4 years. And I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot more community than I was looking for, but I'm better because of it. And also companions. When I think about that, I understand it to be not just the people who we invite in our lives, but also our thought life. The way we think is a companion, because it's always in there talking. You know what I mean? Our emotions, our feelings, all these things are also companions, and we get to choose, to a certain extent, to whatever our capacity is, how we relate to them, who they become in our curriculum of growth through this path. I learned from these different mentors, whether it was Maharshi Mahesh Yogi or Tony Robbins or Esther Pearl or what's the other guy, the science mind guy named Joe Dispenza, and Ernest Holmes, and these visionaries and thinkers and these poets like Maya Angelou, and a vast amount of them. Can't remember this other one's name, but they always speak to our ability to be intentional about our self-concept, about our thought life, being able to distinguish between the thoughts that we're receptive to and play in our head as us when they're not us. I think thinking is more intentional. I can think something through, and I'm intentional about where my thought energy goes. But if something is just coming in like the wind, oftentimes it's a product of the different experiences I've had, the different people I've met. I can cultivate that thought life in a way that it could be a true companion. I can cultivate these emotions, even though sometimes it's like a dragon, to where it could be a true companion. I can cultivate the feelings through transcendental meditation, or whatever someone's technology of consciousness is, or transcendence is, or music. All these things, music, his drum is a companion of his. All these things, you can be very intentional about the world and companionship that we craft. Doesn't always have to look like a person, but if you're looking for more community, you're welcome.
Ameen.
Ameen.
Yes, join us, and you'll find more information about all of that in the link in our bio, maybe on the description, all that kind of stuff. So much love, so much appreciation, and we'll see you next week, God willing.
See you, Mona.